Friday edition. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live now. On the show today is my brother in arms for over a decade, the real Tin Man, the co-founder of the Worldwide Resistance Network.
What's up, my brother from another mother?
Also co-founded with John Connor, the Canadian badass man.
Oh yes,
the Canadian cuckoo dude here. This is an extension from the roundtable from this past Monday. Now, just recently, the father of the young man that was stabbed to death, he was escorted out of a press conference that was done by the family of the 17-year-old that stabbed the young man in the heart, and also he was also was a victim of a close swatting. So, yeah, close swatting. You know,
no
swatting,
shit.
If any should want to know what is swatting, I'll tell you what it is.
Swatting is basically. Sorry. You want to cover that, or should I?
Go ahead.
All right. Swatting is basically when somebody contacts the police, oftentimes pretending to be you, directing the police to your house, saying that there's an emergency, a hostage situation, murder, domestic violence, whatever it takes to get the SWAT team sent to your house in hopes of either getting you arrested or oftentimes killed in the process.
There was one case where two guys were arguing over $1 during Call of Duty Black Ops, the first game online, and it led to someone who was not involved in the game getting shot. And now swatting could lead to someone doing about nearly 10 years. But if someone dies from that, and the person that's caught doing the swatting,
That's murder.
They're looking at life with no parole. Now they're trying to make a martyr out of this kid, thinking he's the Kyle Rittenhouse in this situation.
Yeah.
Only difference is Kyle Rittenhouse was being attacked. This was during 2021 at the time it happened. And they were trying to attack this kid. At the time, he was 17 at the time. 17, just 17 years old, man. And he ended up shooting and killing two in self-defense.
Yeah.
And he was found not guilty. He was acquitted,
In this instance, do they have any witnesses to say that this was a matter of self-defense?
There was one of the guys that did survive the shooting. He had a .38, and he was a known pedophile.
No, I'm talking about the stabbing.
The stabbing, yeah. It was at a event.
Yeah,
and the victim and the assaultee went to different schools.
Yeah. What I'm asking is there anybody who was witness to the stabbing that is arguing that it was a case of self-defense?
that so far we know it's from the parents. That was self-defense. But the thing is, both students were not even both students, both guys were not even going to the same school. Both were at from. Let me back up here a little bit. Both of them didn't know each other, never met, no classes or anything else. Completely from two different schools.
Okay.
The victim was a football. I think it was a football or a track. But the kid with the knife was at the wrong place where it didn't belong because he was supposed to be somewhere else by his class, his school,
Yes.
And he was told that you don't belong here. Like try to say, look, you're a different event. Basically 10.
It's like, hey, you're in the wrong area. Just letting them know. It's like, hey, you're a guest. You're on the home side. You got to get back in the.
But he said that touch me is what happens. Nobody was trying to assault this kid. They're saying, dude, you're in the wrong area.
Okay. Well, we're pretty well familiar with the story, and my reason for asking if there were any witnesses that have come forward stating that this stabbing was in self-defense.
I don't think so. I don't think so far.
The reason I'm asking that is because generally you don't see this as a national headline. Yeah,
No.
it might be a local news story. It might be covered on the local news, definitely in the local papers, for sure. But you generally would not see it on the national news stage, especially considering the perpetrator is of quote unquote African American descent.
Yeah.
And the victim is a white guy. Now, I can see it if it were the reverse and it was a white on black crime, but you have for lack of a better term, black on white crime. At which point that is not generally something that would be published in the mainstream because it doesn't really fit the narrative. And it essentially, for all intents and purposes, casts the perpetrator in a negative light, which again doesn't really follow the narrative unless the narrative has changed to trying to create hostility between blacks and whites or Republicans and Democrats in order to quote unquote light the fire, and that would inevitably incite civil war, just kind of escalating tensions until things erupt into civil war.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of, and that's why I want to post this roundtable tonight, because I want to maybe explore some of the dynamics. Maybe we're missing something, or am I right? Or this is the direction they're trying to push it in order to spark civil war? Just kind of piling the shit on.
So far we know is that the parents have started a GoFundMe page, and somehow his parents bought a mansion for $800,000.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, okay, time out. He's not George Floyd.
No. Yeah, this isn't a George Floyd situation.
Not.
Again, he's claiming
but
potential self-defense. But yeah. Again, you got nobody backing that up.
To proclaim he's like Kyle Rittenhouse. He's like that guy, the guy in the subway in New York. He's not.
No.
He was not being attacked. He's just being told, hey, look, dude, you're in the wrong area.
Yeah, from what I understand, you have home team and you have the home team side and you have the visitors side,
Yeah.
and dude just happened to be in the wrong area. I mean, and it happens, but it doesn't. It shouldn't have been something that escalated to the point that somebody needed to die. And the
Yeah.
fact that this guy escalated it to that point is a terrible tragedy, to say the least. But it doesn't make him the victim in a case of self-defense, especially if nobody is coming forward and saying that this kid acted in self-defense. And at which point, if the white kid was unarmed, but yet this other kid had a knife, again, I don't know where you could really argue self-defense, even if somebody came forward and said it was self-defense, which,
Yeah.
from what I believe, hasn't happened. And they've
Well,
got enough reasonable doubt to say, hey, to take this to trial, obviously, since he's out on bail, which is where your money came in. The parents started a GoFundMe to fund his bail and attorney's fees. Now, the judge dropped his bail. I don't know what it was initially. I believe it was set at $1 million, and the judge dropped it to $250,000. And
$200,000.
I could be wrong on that. It was 250. I believe it was dropped down to $250,000, $250,000. And the parents had set up the GoFundMe, which they used 250 to get him out of jail. And the rest of the money, again, allegedly went to a new house and a new car. So, but
Now,
again,
if that's the case, something's not right here, because now if I was to raise money for my son, I would use it for court costs, lawyer fees, you know.
yeah, and that's
Um,
definitely going to come back to bite them in the ass if they're blowing the money on bullshit. Plus, you also have the fact of, and I don't know if GoFundMe holds to the same bylaws as an actual charity organization,
yeah.
but traditionally in a charity like, say, Ronald McDonald House, that any money donated to the charity would have to go towards what the charity is backing. I'm not sure if the same bylaws apply to things like GoFundMe, but if so, then the parties in charge of the money that they received would be liable for not using that money as was initially intended. They would be liable for
Did you
misuse
say
of
go fuck
charitable
me?
funds. Say again?
Did you just
What?
say go fuck me?
GoFundMe.
Okay. I'm like,
But
dude.
no, that's a good idea. Hey, let's get virgins laid. A Go Fuck Me account. Set up a Go Fuck Me account. Help this kid get laid. Help this guy get laid. Wow. And this is how $1 million ideas are born, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. That's like I think, because Black Lives Matter during 2020, all of 2020 raised $90 million. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, where did the $90 million go? Okay.
The founders. And they bought nice houses and whatnot too.
Patrice Cullors bought 4 houses, $3.2 million. BLM bought a mansion for $6 million.
Yep.
They tried to buy a mansion in Canada, which was a Freemasons lodge. That didn't go well.
Odd place to want to buy, but I digress.
But turns out Kenneth Owens exposed of $8.5 million being used on transgender bullshit, strip clubs, all kinds of things, you know.
Yeah, Candace Owens, she's a woman after my own heart. She has got the balls, for lack of a better term, to cover a lot of the shit that most people won't even touch.
Her and Laura Loomer.
I tip my hat to that woman. That woman.
Her,
you go, girl. I don't even have the words to say how awesome Candace Owens is on the front of what she does.
And Laura Loomer.
Yeah, Laura Loomer too. Okay, yeah. Gotta give it up to her too.
I have mad love for Laura Loomer, dude. I have mad love for that woman.
Okay, calm down.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's like, okay, 8.5, okay, $90 million, right?
Yeah.
8.5 million being used on subject. Now, how they go from 90 million to nearly 6.5 million in the red?
All overspending on credit. But they've been flexing that credit line. But here's the thing: like, you don't really hear about that much anymore. Yeah, it was kind of big news when Candace Owens broke it, but it wasn't really being pushed by the mainstream narrative because Biden was in office at the time. But now that Trump is in office, and now they're looking to push this Civil War narrative, because they set up that narrative, you know, to kind of piss people off. But Biden had got into office, so it just kind of got swept under the rug. But now that Trump's back in office, now they're going to go ahead with their Civil War plan that they had ready in 2020 that they were going to implement if Trump had got elected. So now that he's back in 2025, they're moving forward with that plan, but they can't really focus on old news. Yeah, that can just add fuel to the fire, but they needed something fresh. And I think this kid being in the public eye with this stabbing, I think that is one of their catalysts to try to escalate tensions in order to start a civil war. Else, why publicize this at all? You don't generally publicize stuff like this, especially if it's black on white crime, because it generally doesn't fit the narrative.
Yeah.
Of painting African Americans as victims. But if you're trying to escalate tensions and create a race war, then yeah, you definitely want to publicize it. But any other time, when does stuff like this get published? If somebody kills somebody, it may pop up in the local news, in the newspapers, and maybe on local television news broadcast, but it's not on the national stage. At which point, the perpetrator goes to court. In cases like this, where there probably wouldn't be too much evidence to really sway a jury
to
a non-guilty verdict, the perpetrator would generally take a plea bargain, and that'd be the end of it. Their attorney, which would probably in most cases be a public defender, would advise them going, hey, you have dozens of witnesses who are willing to testify saying that you committed this crime unprovoked. It's not self-defense. You need to take a plea bargain. You need to say guilty and take a reduced sentence. That's generally what would happen in the courts. It wouldn't go to the national stage. You wouldn't have reduced sentencing. You wouldn't have GoFundMe accounts being publicized in the mainstream media.
Exactly.
It really just doesn't happen like that.
No,
And the fact that it is
there,
happening on so
yeah,
many levels, it's insane.
you would have Benjamin Crump or Al Sharpton, or I mean, like it's. I mean, lucky didn't have Benjamin Crump, who's basically an Al Sharpton with a law degree.
Yeah. And the way I see it playing out, I mean, the judge who's of the same nationality as the perpetrator reduced his sentence down $750,000, showing favoritism, at which point she should probably be removed from the case because she's showing
Obama
bias via
appointee.
racial motivation.
She's
And
she's an Obama appointee.
well, even at that, that's a red flag there.
Yeah.
You have an Obama appointed judge, apparently, probably a Soros DA, who lowered the perpetrator's bail from $1 million to $250,000. Okay, you've got a shit ton of bias being portrayed right there, and now the money's been spent on bullshit. And when it finally does go to trial, which it will probably go to trial pretty quick, because this seems like a show trial kind of thing, it'll probably go to trial fairly quick and be very much publicized. Again, something that doesn't generally happen. And despite overwhelming odds pointing to a guilty verdict, he'll probably get a not guilty verdict and be completely acquitted.
Either that or a not guilty on I would call it um uh that mental shit that
Not
that
guilty by reasons of insanity.
yeah.
Yeah, he could go for the insanity plea. But I don't see him go. I don't see that happening. What I see is, again, overwhelming evidence and testimonial stating that
Be a plea
this was
deal.
an unprovoked crime of violence, not a case of self-defense. But yet he'll still be found not guilty and acquitted in an effort to
Well, the thing is,
escalate tensions and hostilities.
Brennan Tatum said on Fox tonight, he said the kid might as well just take a plea deal because if he tries a self defense thing, it ain't gonna work.
Yeah, because you have to have an overabundance of witnesses to say, yeah, this kid
Yeah.
acted in self-defense. But you have an entire crowd of people who were present in the stands and in the surrounding areas that were witness to this conflict that will probably be subpoenaed to testify in court. And when they give their testimonies, most of them are probably going to go and say that this cat acted in a violent, homicidal manner, for lack of a better term, in a situation that did not require murder by way of self-defense.
Yeah.
That did not require loss of life by way of self-defense. I'm sorry. I want to make sure that's the appropriate term. I don't want to misrepresent terms here. But yeah. The self-defense, even if he acted in self-defense, if the other party was unarmed, it should have just been mutual combat.
Yeah.
It shouldn't have resulted in a stabbing. So you have no weapon on the victim, on or around the victim, and you have numerous eyewitness accounts stating that the victim had no weapon and that it wasn't an act of self-defense. But yet he will probably still be found not guilty and acquitted, and at which point that's going to escalate tensions
hugely.
And maybe even that with probably some other factors that are going to be thrown up, some other quote unquote straws that'll break the camel's back. Because it's not just going to be one incident. There's going to be numerous incidents. I saw on Twitter early, or I should say X, sorry, Trump or Elon threw out the kitchen sink on Twitter. So it's X
That
now.
was funny. That was funny.
That was funny. But I saw on X earlier, and I'm not sure if this is confirmed or not. It was an image that stated a woman, and this woman was of African American descent, along with two males whose nationality was not described, kidnapped a baby which they showed to be white, and subsequently murdered it and left it on the railroad tracks. I have not seen this in any other news outlets. Again, it just seems to be potential meme that was floating around. But if true, that's another instance that, more fuel to the fire. Another straw on the camel's back.
They want to start 2020 all over again.
Yeah, they want to start that civil war by this summer. And at which point, the events like this compounding would be the catalyst to start that. Like we talked about before, it may not necessarily be a quote unquote Republican shooting up migrants as has been perpetrated. It might be your standard Black Lives Matter perpetuating scenario.
And Antifa too.
Yeah, Antifa, Black Lives Matter. That might be the card they're going with. Connor suggested maybe it's the Christian, quote unquote, anti Semitic card, labeling Christians as a hate group kind of thing. Now, it could go that way as well, but we really haven't seen too much evidence to that, especially considering Donald Trump is very pissed off at Netanyahu right now. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I'm saying it's not too likely.
No, what about him is that Netanyahu was ousted the first time, and the reason is that people were tired of him. They want him gone because they were tired of all the bullshit that he was pushing.
Yeah, the government wants the conflict, they want the expansion, but the Israeli people, they just want to live in peace. They don't want to worry about whether or not their house is going to get firebombed in the middle of the night. I mean, who wants to live like that? I mean, it's like
in was it 4748? Israel became a nation state. They cut half. They cut
and it's been a gradual expansion ever since then. We know the history. If you look at maps from 1948 to 2025, the map of Israel has greatly grown and expanded. And that's their prerogative. If Israel, even in Old Testament, was a conquering nation, they went in to after the Exodus, after their 40 years in exile, they went in, cleaned house, and took over the land. That's Old Testament.
Yeah.
And the United States is a conquered nation. Most of the world, whether you look at it, whether you like it or not, at some point in history, was a conquered nation.
Yeah.
The United States, before the colonists got here, was occupied by the Native Americans. Mexico by the Aztec, the Incans, the Mayans. and onward down into South America. Okay, so until the English and the Spanish got here, this is pretty much a conquered continent by the English and the Spanish, whether you want to admit it or not.
Exactly. Brazil was conquered by the Portuguese.
Yeah.
Everybody in Brazil is speaking Portuguese.
Yeah. Yeah. But getting back to the point here,
the whole population.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say it's anti-Semitic to say that Israel is a conquering nation. That's just what they did. They wanted to reestablish themselves, and that's what needs to happen. Okay, if you want your land back, and then you go reconquer it. Okay? Yeah. That's how it's always played out in human history. If you want something, or you want to reclaim something, that'd be how you do it in the old days.
Yeah.
And that's how it's always been. Europe is probably one of the biggest perpetrators of that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can't say that's anti-Semitism right there. We're just looking at historical fact.
I mean,
getting back to the point.
There was slavery all over the place. The Irish were slaves. You had the Chinese here in the States were slaves. They slaved their own people. People in Africa sold their own people to English.
Yeah, the Chinese built the railroads. They were an incremental labor force in building the railroads in the United States. The Japanese were thrown into concentration camps after the events of Pearl Harbor. The Scots were oppressed during the reign of Longshanks, and a long time after that. They even had the opportunity to liberate themselves a few years ago. The Scots did, and they voted to stay with the European Union. So they had the opportunity to become their own nation, but they opted to stay under European rule. I'm sure William Wallace, if he had a grave, would have been rolling over in it at that point. So I don't think we can really argue too much anti-Semitism here. What happened to the Jews in World War II and their oppression in Egypt and their oppression by the Romans, was fucked up. But you know what? Every race has had hardships throughout human history if you look deep enough.
Yeah.
So again, people are people. You can dislike what a government is doing without saying anything negative about the people or the culture or even the religion. And I don't think it's I don't think it's going to be that. I don't think it's going to be Christians labeled as a hate group.
It's going to be a equivalent to the Cold War, pretty much.
Yeah, I think that might play a factor in it as well. The tensions with Russia as well, because everybody's already up in arms about that. It's kind of like Cold War number 2. And let's be honest, the first Cold War and the arms race and the Great Space Race. Let's be honest, that was Russia and America's dick measuring contest. That was 2 of the biggest superpowers on the planet going, whose dick is bigger? Let's be honest. That's what the Cold War was.
I say it's like this. It's Spy versus Spy from Mad Magazine with the big dick waving contest of all time.
Yep. And that's what it was. It was the biggest dick measuring contest of all time. But even that dick measuring contest had people scared out of their fucking minds.
Yeah.
Tensions were high. Just as they are now. One wrong move, and both countries are left as radioactive ashtrays.
Well, not just that. I mean, you had McCarthyism.
Yeah.
That motherfucker. Hold on. Snack.
Pizza kind of got you going, huh?
Yeah. That motherfucker ruined this country where he was pushing this bullshit communist shit and crap. Yes, people were at one time communist at one time because
Yeah.
it was our choice. But now, if you're a communist, you're a how do you say it, a anarcho commo or commie. That's Antifa.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in reality, Antifa is no more than the Stasi rejects, man.
Yeah. And most people, even a lot of Democrats who would vote Democrat are starting to come to the realization that you know democratic socialism is effectively communism. A lot of people are starting to see that, and even a lot of people are, even on the Democratic side, are turning on people like Bernie Sanders,
And
because apparently
AOC.
he went out and said, he denounced the burning of Teslas and the destruction of Tesla properties, and his own party started calling him a Nazi, which again is funny because isn't he Jewish?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a Jewish commie. He is a self-proclaimed socialist Jew, and you're sitting there calling a Jewish guy a commie while burning and torching the property of another Jewish guy. What the
Exactly.
fuck? Then they're calling two Jewish guys communists. Like, what the fuck? There's some anti-Semitism for you.
And they
Yeah.
got AOC. She's a socialist too.
Oh yeah. I mean, she's whatever her financial backers want her to be. That's whatever her donors want her to be. I mean, you think a girl who came from bartending and just throws herself into fucking politics and is now like the poster child of the Democratic Party, really has any semblance, any understanding of history or what happened with communism or anything like that?
Check it out.
I mean,
Check it out. Amazon was looking at going into New York because there's a harbor that they're going to use to build and start a business,
uh-huh.
And she said, and so somehow she fucked it up. She fucked up 30,000 jobs. Amazon jobs.
Yeah, and Amazon's a big company. I got a friend who works for Amazon. She's steadily climbing the ladder at that facility. She's doing very well for herself. It's a very stressful job from what I understand, but it pays well. It's got good benefits. It's got a lot of employees. It's a very lucrative market to get into.
Yeah.
Even as a warehouse employee, it's a thriving company. So for AOC to have fucked that up, you really got to either be doing that shit deliberately or you got to be a blundering idiot. And I don't speak in any way to her IQ. I don't know what her educational background is, and I don't know whatever possessed her to get into politics. But unless her goal is complete and utter destruction, I don't think this is the right field for that chick. She'd probably be better off going back to making margaritas.
Yeah.
Make me a Caribou Roo.
Her mom left New York for Florida.
Yeah. I mean, they obviously, these people that aren't jumping ship on the globalist agenda and are holding fast to this ideology as if they still got people fooled is completely insane unless your goal is complete destruction. Now, whether that be the destruction of your party or the destruction that you had as per Agenda 21, Agenda 2025, Agenda 2030, so on, I don't know. But getting back to the aspect of civil war, I mean, obviously, we've got a lot of catalysts being set up here in order to elevate tensions and spark a civil war here. And I would encourage people in this situation to remember that the media lies its ass off. The mainstream media is not your friend.
No.
What you're seeing on the news, though tragic that this boy has died, death is never anything short of a tragedy, especially when it's a child. And let's not mince words. You know, though he was a teenager, he was still essentially a child. Okay, no, that's like a big thing. No parent should ever have to bury their child.
Yeah.
That is like probably. I'm not a parent, but most of the people in my age bracket, there are parents. I've got biological nieces and nephews. I've got surrogate nieces and nephews. I am not without understanding of what that entails and what that means and how much
Oh
something
yeah.
like that rips a person apart.
There's things that happened between, I'll say, October and September, October, and now. You'll hear about post Helene.
Yeah.
In South Carolina. What's the update after the hurricane happened? Is there any good news? I mean,
Yeah, that's not really relevant. I mean, if you're trying to set the fucking country on fire, that's not really relevant. But we see we've already got the catalysts. And things like hurricanes, oh, that happens all the time. It's just old news at this point. It's almost as redundant as mass shootings because it happens so frequently, you're just completely desensitized to it. And I'm not saying that mass shootings aren't tragic and that it's unimportant. I shouldn't say redundant. That would not be the appropriate word. I would say that, it's become hurricanes like mass shootings fall in the same category of being so frequent that people are desensitized to it.
Yeah.
So you need more of an upper scale. You need Nazi kids killing a minority. You need a black killing a white kid and getting let off the hook in a big spectacle that just really tugs at people's emotions and pisses people off in order to spark the civil war. And then it'll be just that one thing that just tips the scales and all hell's going to fucking break loose.
Yeah.
People need to realize that is the agenda. That is what the Democrats and the mainstream media are trying to accomplish. They are trying to spark the civil war. And we need to not buy into it. We need to keep a level head and handle these things appropriately.
Very, very, very civil, calmly.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, you need a logical mind, man.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe it was Sun Tzu who said that you have to remain calm in a confrontation. I could be wrong. It could just be a martial arts philosophy. But I do believe that, it was something that Sun Tzu had employed in his own teachings, a military strategy is, in a conflict, Your best weapon is to remain calm. In an elevated situation, center yourself. Keep calm, because if you lose your shit, you lose it up here, and that's where mistakes happen, and that's where the enemy can capitalize. And we
Exactly.
don't want that. So we need
No.
to see this for what it is, and attempt to provoke us and provoke the American people to anger, to where they do something and slip up, and it's used as a pretext to burn this whole country down. Because you figure, we're not just facing the prospect of civil war here, which we've already discussed, the supply lines, beachheads in blue states by way of military bases that are primarily occupied by conservative soldiers, and so on and so forth. But you also have the prospect of nuclear war with Russia, China, Israel, and so on. All this shit is intertwined. And if we lose our shit over here, we could definitely lose our shit over there. If we lose focus, we lose focus across the board, and everything falls apart. Things will fall apart here. Things will fall apart in peace negotiations with the parties overseas. And at which point you got the civil war happening here. And then you've also got nuclear war. And what's going to be hit first if the United States and Russia go to nuclear war? California, the entire western coastal region, completely fucking obliterated. Okay, and especially California, because they've got the densest population, a vast majority of military bases, and are the closest target to Russia, because they're going to fire westward into the western states, the United States. They're not going to fire east over UK and all that. That's a longer distance to travel. They're either going to have to shoot north, and we've already discussed that with Connor, with the missile defense systems on the Canadian side, or they're going to have to shoot over the Pacific, which they will probably wind up shooting quite a few over the Pacific, especially if they have nuclear submarines lurking around in the Pacific, anywhere in the Pacific. It would only be logical to launch those sub-to-air missiles on the Western Front. So guess what? Los Angeles, Long Beach, San Diego, San Francisco, all gone. March Air Force Base, the shipyards in Long Beach.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
Camp Pendleton in San Diego. Fucking. What else am I missing here? Did I say March Air Force Base already?
Edwards,
Edwards Air Force Base.
Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, you got quite a few bases that are prime military targets. Los Angeles has an insanely dense population, as does San Diego and San Francisco. And what do you see when you see movies, disaster movies like Terminator Genesis? What city did they display getting nuked in Terminator Genesis? San Francisco. Where did Caesar and the apes gain intelligence and then go into the redwoods? San Francisco. right across the Golden Gate Bridge into the Redwoods. Where? And what else is in the Redwoods? Bohemian Grove.
Yeah.
You think this shit is coincidence?
No.
They're pretty much telling you what they're going to do. And in the original Planet of the Apes, I don't think they touched on it in the remakes, but in the original Planet of the Apes, after the uprising of the apes, they went off and did their own thing. But then humanity did what? Went to nuclear war and wiped themselves out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you find that out in the second one. Actually, it wasn't even the second one. It was the first one, the original Planet of the Apes. I forget what the astronaut's name was, but he finds the Statue of Liberty and he drops to his knees and he's like, "No, you sons of bitches. You did it. You let him do it. You let him blow up the fucking world." He knew what had fucking happened. Nuclear fucking war.
Exactly.
You know, and then they remake Planet of the Apes. Centered in San Francisco. Terminator Genesis sees the destruction of San Francisco on Judgment Day. Okay? We know these people, we know the globalists like to tell people what their plans are, like they did with 9/11, like they did with COVID. They love to gloat about these things. You know, maybe this is something to start paying attention to. And we're getting very close to that deadline to where they're saying they want to have this civil war this summer. At which point, I would say anybody in California, you might want to consider getting the fuck up out of Dodge. Because again, if it goes, even just civil war, you're going to be surrounded by red states. You got the red states on the east. You got the ocean on the west.
Yeah.
You ain't got nowhere to fucking run. Okay? So you don't want to be caught up in District 13.
There was that episode of conspiracy theory where they're talking about 10 sectors.
Yeah.
10 sectors. And I'm like, shit. And they had one about Infraguard.
Yeah.
Infraguard is also involved in gang stalking, trafficking as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because a friend of mine, she's a victim of gang stalking and trafficking through the direct energy weapons.
Yeah.
And these weapons can pretty much rape you.
Yeah, and Trump recently came out and said straight up, we've got weapon technology that you wouldn't even imagine.
The energy would target your vital organs, your groin area.
Mm-hmm.
And also in the back of your head, you have a flat part where we start here, a flat part where about a little bit behind the crown, or the target. And I mean, it ain't just going to target the TI; it's going after everybody.
Yeah, I mean, you got the prospect of people getting hit with those types of weapons if we go to civil war, because again, the United States military is going to maintain itself as the United States military, regardless of where it is. You got beachheads in blue states. You got red beachheads in blue states, many of which probably have these energy weapons on deck, along with a bunch of other fun toys. I mean, you're pretty well close to Area 51. You know, God knows what kind of fun toys they got up there.
Yeah.
And, you know, another point I want to bring up is, I shouldn't say make up, because this would be very much factual. The United States had the United States military, who is currently at our southern border, is going to remain loyal again to the United States because they're primarily conservative. Same with ICE, at which point those personnel stationed at the San Diego border, San Diego Tijuana border, they're either going to head to the bases. They're most likely going to head to the bases, at which point it's going to be a free-for-all from across the southern border. All hell's going to break loose. Human trafficking. You think the human trafficking and the fentanyl and the migrant influx was bad during during Biden's administration? It's going to be a million times worse if we go to civil war, because that whole area is going to be completely unmanned. From California, all of California is going to be relatively unprotected for one reason or another. So the influx is going to be fucking insane. California itself is going to be fighting a civil war on multiple fronts. They're not going to survive.
No.
California in particular will not survive. The other states might have a chance at surviving and getting reabsorbed into the Union, but California in particular, they're fucked. You got the prospect of you're surrounded by ocean and red states and Mexico. Okay? You got the prospect of nuclear war coming from the Pacific from Russia. You've got opposition from the United States, primarily red states, coming from the east. And you've got an influx of migrant cartels, human trafficking, and drugs coming in from the south. Seriously. Anybody in California? Run, bitch, run!
Either that, arm yourself to the teeth, man.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest problems, most liberals out there, they're anti-gun. And the ones that, even are hold to leftist ideologies, would maintain their firearms, specifically, mostly, gang affiliates, most of them would side Democrat, but still would maintain their firearms, because it's just a way of life. And, I'm not just talking blacks, you got the Latin, Asians, and even white gangs that maintain these same principles. It's universal, regardless of your nationality or regardless of what gang affiliation. The structure and the policies are essentially the same.
You may see some gangs put their differences aside for the time being and become a neighborhood watch.
It might start out that way, but
the thing is, they have to understand why they're doing it.
Yeah.
Put your shit aside for the time being and realize the reason they're defending their hood is to protect their territory from anybody who's like they don't want to interfere, like invade. But the thing is, we got problems that's coming to the board, man.
Yeah.
And these gangs need to really sit and think logically and understand that if you put your differences aside for the moment, because you're in California.
Yeah.
Southern, Central, North. I'm in Central California. We have the Bulldogs. We have the Dakota Boys. right? We have F-13, F-14 Crips, and
Yep.
the
And
Bulldogs. The Bulldogs here in Fresno is the biggest gang in the city.
yeah. And
Uh,
in many of the southern areas, heading down towards San Diego, you've got
eight,
Hell's
eight,
Angels
yeah,
and you've got Vagos. You've got a
Bandito.
lot of the skinhead gangs and the Latino gangs. The Latino gangs would probably side with their Mexican brothers coming across the border. But, a lot of the African American gangs would probably start teaming up against a lot of the whites because they would view even the white gangs as being conservative leaning. So it's going to be mostly, it's not so much going to be a civil war. It'll be an internal race war while defending yourself against the onslaught of the rest of the United States coming in from the east and then the influx of migrants from the south. And that's if you're lucky enough not to have nuclear weapons being fired at you from the Pacific.
You
And
got,
what it's probably going to be is it's going to result in just turf wars on a grand scale.
Also, you have the Minutemen. The Minutemen in parts of Arizona, along Arizona, New Mexico, El Centro, California area.
Yeah,
and they're known as the glory hunters. Guys,
yeah.
That would monitor, patrol, and they don't do it like the military. They do it in pickup trucks, and they're armed to the teeth.
Yeah,
they're from small towns. Population is about not even 100.
Yeah,
and it's a group of 30 to 35 people minimum.
Yeah. Plus, you got the Native American tribes out there too. Sabota, Pachanga, Morongo. My God. You think they're just going to sit back and let shit go to hell and not friggin' take up arms too? Those reservations are fucking loaded with fucking weapons.
Yeah.
And, though they're protected constitutionally, they pretty much are their own governing territories. You think the shit hits the fucking fan that they're not going to come out for a fucking powwow like no other? Or, many of them maybe even decided, hey, this is our chance to take back the territory.
Exactly.
Yeah, they might just see this as an opportunity to reclaim all of California and maybe expand from there.
But the thing is,
it's going to be one big turf war across the state.
Yeah, true. But the rumor that Trump's going to start a civil war, that's just a gaslighting us from the left.
Yeah. But who's going to start the civil war?
If there was going to be a civil war, it'll be for the horse's mouth.
Yeah, I mean, if an official declaration of war can only be enacted by Congress.
Yes.
But people taking matters into their own hands and just going out and say enough is enough and just start killing each other, that doesn't take an act of Congress or legislation
no.
from the President of the United States. If people lose their shit and just start beating the hell out of each other and killing each other,
yeah.
At which point the president would have to impose limited martial law, like what Bush did during the LA city riots back in the early 90s, in order to gain control, at which point that would be seen as an act of aggression. See there, we just fucking figured it out. civil unrest on an unprecedented scale, resulting in the use of the National Guard and the implementation of limited martial law to regain order, just like in the LA City riots in the 90s.
Yeah.
At which point, the elected bodies in the state of California, like Gavin Newsom, in conjunction with other blue states, view that as an act of aggression and declare their independence, seceding from the Union. At which point, there is the official declaration of civil war.
Yeah.
We go from civil unrest to limited martial law to civil war and seceding, and blue states seceding from the Union. That's how it's going to play out. It doesn't need to be, oh, some Republican shut up a bunch of migrants. No, you create civil unrest that requires martial law. There's your pretext to lead for blue states to lead the Union, and now it's civil war.
Yeah.
It's so fucking simple. I'm surprised nobody's seen this before. Fuck.
Oh, Martin Luther. Good.
It's always just so simple.
California is oh man. California is like being investigated heavily. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. And you got Newsom and the AG saying, we're going to stop Trump and his tariffs.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Okay, dickweed. How are you going to do that?
Yeah. That's a little bit above your pay grade, Gavin.
Teddy Roosevelt
You're a locally elected official, bro.
Teddy Roosevelt used tariffs.
Mm-mm.
Back then. No.
No, we gradually shifted away from using tariffs after the Federal Reserve Act of 1913 and the implementation of taxation in the IRS.
Yeah.
It took a few decades, but they did gradually shift away from tariffs in favor of higher taxes and outsourcing businesses to other countries. You know, that's how we went from being from the industrial age and the industrial revolution and things like Detroit being the motor city capital of the world to what we are now. You know, people of this generation, they weren't alive. Most of the people that were alive during times of tariffs and whatnot, they're not around anymore.
No.
And the few that are around probably weren't that political to begin with. So most people alive, especially the younger generations, don't know how tariffs work and don't understand the political process, especially in terms of things like tariffs, which are a relatively new concept for a lot of people. Because you didn't hear a lot of talk about tariffs being imposed from the United States onto other countries up until recently. So people are freaking out about that. That's another freaking match on the haystack right there. You got the issue with the tariffs. People freaking the fuck out because they don't understand what tariffs are and how they work and how we've been fucked over the past 40 years since the outsourcing that really kicked off, that really fucking went full swing in the 70s and 80s. Okay, nobody really understands tariffs and economics. I mean, they don't do economics. I forget what fucking comedian it was, but he was talking about having taken economics in college. He's like, I understand these things because I took economics, but the class was in the morning. So it was hard to stay awake. And I looked at the professor and go, "Why the fuck are you teaching this so early in the morning? Are you trying to keep this stuff a secret?"
Yeah, I mean, we've been
I think it
paying
was the same comedian. I can't remember his fucking name.
Gallagher.
No, it wasn't Gallagher. One of his big skits was, "We need to create a really big thing. That's how we're going to boost the economy. We need to build a really big thing."
Gallagher was an English major.
Yeah, Gallagher was the watermelon guy.
Yeah, he was he's an English major.
Yeah. No, he was a political comedian. I can't remember his name.
Let's see,
And no, it wasn't George. It wasn't George Carlin.
There's
It wasn't George Carlin. No, not Bill Hicks. The only thing I can think of, it's been so long since I've seen it. Like, I saw it back in 2010. It's been that long since I've seen it. But one of the key skits he was talking about was, build the really big thing. So, anybody wants to figure out what the hell I'm talking about and put it in the comment section. Google search comedian skit, really big thing skit. Yeah, comedian skit, really big thing. Build the really big thing.
I'll
probably look it up when we're done here, and I'll send it to you. His whole stand-up routine is fucking hilarious.
It's not
He's more along the lines of like Dennis Leary, when Dennis Leary did comedy, but he's more political. Think like Dennis Leary meets George Carlin.
I think Dennis Leary is still political.
He's more into his movies, but he did one stand-up. It was an HBO special years ago called "No Cure for Cancer." That's where his song "I'm an Asshole" came from. Yeah, that's the only time I ever knew. That's the only thing I know of him that pertains to stand-up comedy. Anything else has been, movies and television. But we kind of got off point here. Where were we before we went off on this tangent?
Well, I mean, the thing is that they're
we're talking about California getting in trouble.
Yeah,
and the tariffs and everything.
They passed the Leno law, Leno's law, which is for about classic car smog bullshit.
Yeah,
they're gonna shut down CARB. If any of you ever drive a tuner or a muscle, and you got your car all souped up and shit, and you got
anything that would put out an above average carbon footprint.
If you have a certain part of your car, you need a CARB sticker. Okay.
What does that do exactly?
Emissions.
Okay, yeah, obviously it's higher emissions, but what does requiring this sticker do in the long run? It's like, okay, you got a sticker on your car, whoop-de-doo. I got bumper stickers all over the back end of my car.
Well,
one of which says, "If only gay cops pull me over." So, I mean, come on, where are we going with this thing?
The sticker would be right now. If you have an air filter thing in your vehicle, that's your engine and shit. And most cars these days are so stock. For example, the Hellcat Charger and shit, it's stock, but can make over 700 horsepower.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like there's a guy that got pulled over because he got accused of having modified exhaust. the car's bone stock making 700 horsepower, man. And
Okay.
and they want to know, like, oh, I want to see your engine. I'll look good. Why? Just fucking do it. So the guy had a carb sticker on his air filter in his car.
Okay.
It was a aftermarket air filter, which is like, why are you so worried about when it's legal, when it's stock? Suck my cock.
Okay. So
So
what you're required to have this sticker on your car.
yeah,
Okay,
if you
what goes beyond that? Like, oh yeah, my car has above average emissions because it was built stock or I modified it with this, that, or the other.
yeah, if you modify it, say like, we want to put more air in the engine and shit, cold air.
Okay.
If you didn't have the carb sticker, they would state rep you and have you take your car to this place to have it checked and shit.
I see.
And they determine whether your car can be registered or not.
Mhm.
And so carb is going down. Carb's going to be gone here pretty soon.
Well, I know that a lot of people in California have gone towards e-vehicles, which I know a lot of those are Tesla vehicles, which is potentially problematic for anybody who's a Democrat driving a Tesla. So I know before that, Priuses were the big thing.
Anybody's watching this, okay? Us two are going to tell you this: you're a dumb shit.
Yeah. But I what I'm getting at is
EVs put out more carbon than any other vehicle right now because of the fucking battery you got up your car's ass.
yeah, the lithium mining, all the mining for the materials. Now
Exactly
that's not
right.
including all the coal mining that California has to do in order to generate that much electricity to power the car. And I forget how far you have to travel in order for the vehicle to actually start being a worthwhile investment in terms of having a positive carbon impact. I
Now
forget
the
how many
regular
miles it is you have to drive it.
shit. I don't know.
I don't know.
But
It's a high end amount. It's
ladies
a
and
very
gentlemen, that are Democrats, leftist, socialist nut jobs here in California, a regular gas power, whether it's diesel or gas or ethanol, puts out less emissions than a fucking EV. So basically, your EV is a polluting piece of shit.
yeah.
And and young millennials that owns the EV, you guys fucked yourself by buying an EV because you're like, oh, going green. Going green don't mean shit. You're not really going green. You're going brown like shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and I get the concept. You want to have a positive impact on the environment. I don't buy into the whole, oh, this freaking catastrophe is going to happen in 10 years. Oh, as the rain's going to happen in 10 years. Oh, the polar ice caps are going to melt in 10 years. Oh, global warming in 10 years. Oh, climate change in 10 years. Like, I don't fucking buy into that shit. It's a new fucking scare tactic every year, and the only thing that happens is higher taxes. Okay.
Kids,
But
here's the truth. Global warming don't exist.
yeah, there is
Climate
no
change,
climate crisis.
there is no climate change because it don't exist.
Yeah.
AOC
Yeah.
having a brain never existed.
Yeah. Now are we having yeah. There is no freaking global catastrophe going to happen in regards to pollution or anything like that. Now, does that mean that we shouldn't do our part to clean up the environment? You know, not dumping our fucking trash in the ocean, not putting chemicals in the water that make the freaking frogs scary, or you know, having so much
Here's
smog in the fucking air that nighttime in Los Angeles is a bright green. Yeah, I've been in Los Angeles near LAX at nighttime. The sky is fucking green. Okay, yeah. Can we do things to improve these things? Yes, of course. We don't want garbage in our oceans and in our streams and whatnot. We don't want. I don't want to be breathing in fucking smog.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I get it. There are things that have an environmental impact. Are we facing a climate crisis? No. Okay, but that is not to say we shouldn't do our part to try to clean up this fucking dirt ball. Okay.
Ever since the Clean Air Act in 1970, mechanics and gearheads have been doing their best for the last 50 plus years, keeping the car running cleanly. Why? Because gearheads are more mechanically inclined to know about cars than the ones who are driving in limousines, masturbating while fondling their dog.
Well,
that.
Yeah, there's my carbon footprint for the night. But yeah, you know, that's another thing, you know, people are freaked the fuck out about. And, you know, you got a lot of EVs, a lot of people driving EVs in California.
Yeah.
So people not driving EVs are going to be targeted by these new legislations that you're talking about. A lot of people who were driving EVs are driving Teslas and are going to have to revert back to driving petroleum-based vehicles.
Either that,
for lack of an option, because their car was either destroyed or they sold it off to save face because it was a Tesla.
Here's an option number 3. If you own an EV, rip out the fucking battery, put in a V8, motherfucker.
Yeah, provided they actually had that kind of money, which leads me to my next point as to why tensions are so fucking high.
Or if you find one obsolete but still look good, put in a fucking V8, motherfucker.
Yeah, again, if they had the money. Yeah, most people in California don't have that kind of money.
If you're on a budget, pinch a penny while pinching your nuts.
Yeah, well, I mean, how are you supposed to pick? Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people would love to do these things. What?
I love it.
Yeah. You're a fucking goof. But like economically, Californians are fucked.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody could barely afford to live out there. I mean, there are people who are working that are living in fucking tents. I mean,
my son's mom, she's paying $1,200 a month in rent.
Yeah.
For a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house.
And that's fucking good. In contrast. But most people don't. I mean, there's a lot of places where an apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment's going for like $1,200. I mean, that's fucking ridiculous.
They're trying to lower the price of rent down. You know, I mean,
well, I mean, they need to. California's way too overpriced.
A buddy of mine that I grew up with, he moved to Louisiana. His folks moved there too because of the shit. And they lived northwest while Zero was living northeast area. You know, because things were cheaper in Louisiana.
Yeah,
Stuff and
a lot of people from California moved out here too. After I came out here to Tennessee, a lot of people from California came out here as well. A lot of people who were working those government jobs that started working from home during COVID.
yeah,
The cost of living was so high out there that they're like, well, I'm working from home. I can work from home anywhere on the fucking planet. So I'm going to keep my job in California, making the California income, but I'm going to move to another state where the cost of living is substantially cheaper. So they moved to places like Tennessee, which did drive our market up a bit. It's not too insanely
yeah,
bad. I mean, it is bad, but not near as bad as California. And now a lot of these people are being told, hey, you had to come back to work now, and now they're out of a job.
yeah.
And you'd think they would have learned their lesson because similar shit happened back in the early 2000s during the economic boom when we had when they were building all those houses out in California.
The .com shit.
Well, not just the .com shit, but they were building houses especially in the Inland Empire area. They were building tract homes like it was going out of style. I mean, Rancho Cucamonga, Temecula, Marietta, Hemet, between like Los Angeles and San Diego, houses were just going up like a motherfucker, just boom, 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 boom. And a lot of these people were buying up these houses in the valleys who were working in places like Los Angeles or San Diego and had to commute long distances just to get to and from work. But then gas prices shot up and they couldn't afford it. And another problem
Henry
that
J. Kaiser, the guy that started, the guy that was named after, his name was used for Kaiser Permanente and shit.
Uh-huh.
He spent a lot of money. Okay, $14 million at the time. It was a lot at the time, and he built homes for workers, and and he wanted to build a community, and
uh-huh.
and it lasted for a bit, but there's a prison out there's an old prison out there, old hospital, you name it, a school. I mean, if you want to go someplace, invest your money out that place there.
Yeah.
Rebuild that community there, make it look new, because not everybody can afford to live in the city,
No.
But if you have some cash aside, use that to go up and down Route 66 where you could
plenty to be built.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like one of the problems that they had, back during this housing market boom, gas prices shot up where for people that were already having to commute to work. Plus, they were on what were known as adjustable rate mortgages. And this is why I didn't buy, because I could have bought one of those houses. I have my eye on this beautiful fucking house, but they offered me an adjustable rate mortgage, not a fixed rate mortgage. And the reason for that being was because you didn't need really good credit to get an adjustable rate mortgage, whereas a fixed rate mortgage, you needed good credit. So a lot of people who didn't have very good credit were getting these adjustable rate mortgages, which what the selling point was, you don't need a super good credit score in order to qualify.
Yeah.
But if the market changes and the cost of living goes down, guess what? Your mortgage goes down. But on the flip side, and I figured this out early, and I even asked them, and they got pissed off at me. The realtor got pissed off at me. I said, well, what if the cost of living goes up? Then what's my rent going to go to? What's my mortgage going to go to? And they got pissed off and they wouldn't answer my question. And that was kind of the end of that. And then, a few years later, gas prices shot up. Mortgage rates from these adjustable rate mortgages went from a few $100s to a few $1,000s, and people lost their homes because they couldn't afford to commute to work and they couldn't afford their mortgage.
That
And
was
then
right
history
around what?
repeats.
Wait.
Yeah, and then history essentially repeats itself because those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Oh, we get to work from home now. So they move out of state and keep their California jobs until the government comes in and does something that just kind of rocks your world and go, hey,
Yeah.
guess what? You got to go back to the office. Well, shit, I live in Tennessee. My job's in California. Yeah, 2,500 miles one way. That's a hell of a commute. I'm fucked.
There's a guy who owns Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Finch.
Mm-hmm.
Him and um, what's his name? Epstein ended up buying out these lots in New Albany, Iowa. It's in Iowa and shit. And they bought because New Albany was like a very small community, and population was like 400 people.
Yeah.
And they ended up wiping the whole community off the map. And you have Google, Facebook, Intel, Microsoft building data centers in New Albany, Iowa.
Oh.
Same location, same area. These two billionaires wiped out, and if you didn't want to sell or leave, they send in law enforcement to your ass to say, "Hey, leave. You gotta go."
Yeah, again, private property rights. That's why you need allodial title. Again, Trump, allodial titles on all ownership of vehicles and houses. All titles need to be converted to allodial title, and ownership needs to be absolute. Orange man, listen to what I am saying.
Not just that. How about let's get rid of property tax across the board? You own your house, you own your property. Why pay the tax? You own the motherfucker.
Yeah. Especially considering you're going to tariffs. Eliminate income tax. We've had this conversation before. Eliminate income tax, eliminate property tax. Because you're already getting sales tax and you're getting it 3 times on any given product.
Yeah. And guess why it wasn't for the property tax? Democrats.
Yep. See, that's the problem. And, especially in California, you got not only federal income tax, but you got state tax. And, regardless of whether you're for the left or for the right, I think people are starting to realize, hey, this really just isn't working out. The Democrats said they were the party for the poor people. The poor people are still fucking poor. They said they were the party for the blacks. The blacks are still getting fucked over just as much as everybody else is. I mean, they're not really helping anybody. So you would have to look at, and I sat there and I give this a lot of thought. Regardless of whether you're Republican or Democrat, you got to look at the reality of the situation. Why are things so bad in these blue states? Well, you could argue policy, but then you're going to get caught up in the left versus right paradigm. But if you look at it from a neutral standpoint and look at it from a logistics standpoint, the Democratic Party is the party of the poor people, right? And the Republican Party is the party that represents the working class, right? So if if your voters are the poor people and the Republicans' voters are the working people, you don't want to lift the poor people up to the point that they're working, because then they wouldn't fit in that demographic anymore.
Exactly.
They wouldn't be poor, so their best interests would then be served by Republican policies. So, in order to keep Democratic voters, which are the poor people are your target audience, you got to keep the poor people poor in order to keep them voting for you. Otherwise, you're going to fall out of power. So you create a system of, you don't boost the people up, you create a system of dependency. And that's why these states like California, New York, and so on are falling into decay, because you're not boosting these people up. You're outsourcing jobs, you're creating a system of dependency on the government, and you're not taking care of infrastructure, and you're not taking care of the people. And at which point, the people are getting tired of it. Poor people don't want to be poor. They don't want to be starving. They don't want to be sitting here wondering if their EBT card's going to get shut off. Okay? But that's a sad reality for most people in that state. Yeah. And the people that are working are getting fucking taxed to death by state and federal taxes. And the cost of living is completely insane. So you've got tensions on high as is. And now you've got this racial shit being propagated again. Just one more degree of stress after the other, just constantly raising the temperature on tensions until it explodes.
When Route 66 was still commissioned, there was a lot of money going through Route 66. Lots of money.
Oh, yeah.
Recommission it. Recommission it. Because a lot of money from travelers were going through there. Route 66 was like kind of like the Wall Street Highway.
Yeah.
Mine was going through. It went from Chicago all the way to Southern California. And a lot of places where you spend money. No. And you can stay in a cheap hotel, which, hey, good money made there, man. You know, I mean,
yeah, Cars was a great example of reiterating what Route 66 used to be back in its heyday.
Oh, yeah.
And you look at California. California used to be a great place to live. But it just fell into decay because it wasn't taken care of. It wasn't getting the business it needed. It wasn't getting the care that it needed. It wasn't getting the traffic and the revenue that it needed. You know, most people are leaving to the point that I believe it was the Osbournes that were looking to move out of state, and Sharon Osbourne had a shit fit when the state of California tried to impose a tax on them to move out of state. She's like, are you fucking kidding me? And, you know, I know a lot of people have their grievances with Sharon Osbourne, but I think everybody would agree that, you know, you don't tax somebody for wanting to move. I mean, and when your state is in such a bad state of disrepair that you are having to tax people to move out of your state as if you could ever impose that,
it's illegal.
You're in really dire straits.
It's illegal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, burning down the Palisades, you know, cutting off the fire systems and everything they did there, all that shit was illegal. But, you know, here we are.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's just getting to the point that, you know, like the Palisades, that entire state's going to fucking burn. And, you know, figuratively or maybe even literally.
I mean, since then,
it's like
that was in February? During February?
Mm-hmm.
Fire? The
And
last fire, the last fire, okay, from what we know so far, was in Janupa Valley, 4 hours from where I live.
yeah. Well, I know there's a lot of fires that happen in the IE. I know there's a lot of fires that happen in the IE, a lot of which are arson. At least they were back in the day. I still follow the Hemet, some of the Hemet groups from where I used to live. And recently, just in this year alone, I think there's been like 4 or 5 fires, and even most recently, a major gas leak that could have freaking turned into a big fire if not handled properly. I mean, and the cost of living there is completely fucking insane. And I'm thinking to myself, why is the cost of living so fucking high? It's a fucking ghetto, and it's constantly on fire.
They want to create the movie Escape from L.A. live action.
Pretty much. Pretty much, yeah. That's what I say. You know, with everything that's currently happening, the state of things in that state in particular, the threats that the state is facing, and just all these factors, if you just roll in all these factors and you just spread it all out on your kitchen table and just look at everything, California is not where you want to be.
No.
20, 30, maybe 40 years ago, yeah, but not now. The people in California, you're essentially on the Titanic using a mop bucket to try to keep that motherfucker from sinking. Okay, you're in the Arctic, the ship's going down. It's time to cut your losses and jump ship before you die. Yeah. And I mean, I gotta mean that in the most literal sense, because if we're looking at civil war and even the prospect of economic collapse, power outages, the prospect of nuclear war with Russia, China, and possibly Israel, that's not where you want to be, guys.
Honestly, I would rather live in a motorhome. Yeah. I rather live in a motorhome and travel to the day I die.
And you probably could do that. You know, you just said, fucking just took all your money and got yourself a motorhome. You can divide up that income right there and just go, because you're on Social Security, SSDI, right?
Yeah, SSI.
Oh, you're on SSI?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're probably pulling about $900 a month then.
1196.
1196? I thought the average was like 900, and that went up in like 2024.
No, it went up last year.
Yeah, in 2024 it went up.
Last year, I was getting 1136. It went up from 1136. Yeah, it went from 1136 to 1196.
Yeah, so you know you could probably get a motorhome and spend a few hundred a month doing some travel, a few hundred a month on food, a few hundred a month on a payment for the RV. You could probably do it. You could probably do that on $1,200. Especially if your checks are direct deposit.
They are.
And those who are on Social Security disability, I was reading earlier today because I was looking this up for a friend that Social Security disability has gone up to like 3,000 something
a month.
Yeah, just to that. I could be wrong. I'll have to double check that. But I believe it was somewhere around like 3,500 increased in 2024, and it was SSI was increased to 900 just to supplement for cost of living increases. Now, I don't know how anybody in California could live on $900 a month or even $1,200 a month in California. It's just not possible in most places. I mean, you'd need a roommate or something, definitely, because the cost of living out there is just it
a lot
really
a lot
doesn't
of
work.
people are getting PayPal cards, cash app cards, and they're putting money on those every month.
Yeah.
Um, I have a PayPal card where the minimum I can like the max is like $5,000, no more no less than $5,000.
Yeah.
I also my dad this. I got a PayPal card that the max is like 5,000. I got a car that I was upgraded to. I could probably put money on it until it'll reach about nearly $8,000 total. And
Yeah. At which point you could take that money and go buy yourself an RV, or at least put a good down payment on one.
the brand new one, no. I got something that I can fix up along the way. Nothing new.
Well, I mean,
I hate the new
if you
shit.
wanted to get an old one or a fixer upper or whatever, that's just more money that you save in the long run.
I was never a big lover of new shit. I've always been like an old school kind of guy.
You like the nostalgia. You like me. You like the nostalgia.
Yeah. Do you know the movie Stripes?
Oh shit! Oh nice. Fuck yeah!
When I saw this in the movie, I go, I'm gonna own that. I'm gonna live in this motherfucker for the rest of my life.
See, and a lot of people in California, they have RVs. They're living out of their RVs. It wouldn't be anything for them to just say, you know what, fuck it, and just hit the road, Jack, and don't come back no more, no more, no more, no more.
There's a small town, someplace it's a small town, and they passed a city ordinance where, or city law where you're not allowed to live in your RV, even if it's on your land. The reason for that is they want you into a house with water and power. Why is that? To collect.
Yeah.
To collect their what you owe them. There's a lady in Florida years and years ago. She would collect rainwater.
Yeah.
To bathe, to cook, to water.
Yeah, she got in a lot of fucking trouble. City and county ordinances. Man, fucking ripped her shit out.
She owned the house. She owned her house. She owned the house. Showed it. They took it from her. Why? Because she was collecting rainwater.
Yep.
And she's using solar. Going off grid.
Yep.
That's
another thing that Trump needs to fucking address. And these are things that aren't being talked about. Trumpy poo, I hope you're listening. Orange Man, we're talking to you.
Remove your fizz from your wife's asshole.
Oh, come on. If you had a wife that beautiful, would you? No, exactly.
I would want a Latina mommy, and I'll be a happy man.
Also, everybody's got their preference, but what I'm saying is, if you had a wife that beautiful, would you remove your hand from her ass?
If I have me a Latina mommy who wants to get fisted in the ass, hey, I'm there.
See, case in point, Ken. Don't hate on the man for having a beautiful wife. So,
did you know that in the gay community that lube has the price of lube has gone up to the elbow.
Good night, everybody.
Oh, sorry about that. My son would completely my son, he would completely laugh at that joke because my son's gay and he has the balls to come up with a gay joke. And I tell you what, my son's 26 years old. Tell you what, he's the ballsiest dude ever. I mean, just like he will come up with off the wall shit, and like, dude, I had to walk away and go, fuck, you know. And yes, there are gay people, they're comedians, and they're fucking funny. They
Oh
are
yeah.
fucking funny.
Yeah. See, that's what we need. We need more levity. And I think this is a great place to leave off this conversation on a positive note. You know, we had a good laugh, and that's where we should end it. And that's where we need to keep our focus, ladies and gentlemen. We need to remain optimistic. We need to remain positive, positive thoughts, positive energy, and not let the bullshit that's being propagated get to us. We need to keep our wits about us. We need to not
Yeah,
allow
yeah.
ourselves to get caught up in our emotions and allow ourselves to get stupid and make a mistake to where we wind up in a civil war or even a nuclear war. And we need to
Tin
keep
Man and
things
I,
happy.
Tin Man and I, we met on YouTube in 2011, and during that time, I I I love comedy.
Oh
I
yeah.
love funny shit. Look, I'm a big fan of the Buddhism Hotline. I'm a big fan of Onage Pranks. Enter the Dojo, right? Your mama at the cartoon thing, you know.
Yeah.
Late, I'll say mid to late 2011, early 2012, there was a program called Retarded Policeman.
I remember that. Let's not get into the dynamics of that. My
And,
phone is actually dying.
okay,
So we do need to wrap this up. I'm
I'll
literally at 4%, bro.
we need funny back. We need comedy back. I don't care if you're offended. It's life. That happens to you.
Yes. Yeah. Focus on the
And
positive. Don't let the
yeah,
negative get to you.
yeah.
Find joy in life and don't let the negativity get you down or cause you to do something stupid. Let's not let ourselves get caught up in what the mainstream media is trying to push because the mainstream media, like Tom McDonald has said, the mainstream media, if they get their way, is going to have us killing each other. Tom McDonald says it all the time. So we need to keep level heads, and the best way to do that is to try to turn that frown upside down.
It looks like it's time to put the fat ass turkey in the oven, brother.
I'm down with that. So this is your podcast. You go ahead and close it out, brother.
Oh, okay. Now, before we go real quick, check out Tin Man in the Worldwide Resistance Network. Also on X, the Real Tin Man. Also, follow him on Rumble, Real TWRN. If you don't, you're retarded. As for myself, my name is Reverend Ordo, and this has been the Anonymous Minawati Network, or SEC. If you're new to this channel, like, subscribe, comment below, hit the bell for notification, and always live healthy, happy, and wise. And I mean fucking healthy and wise. And we all see you in the next video. Thanks to my good buddy Tin Man for being a guest. Peace out. Godspeed. Buddha bless. And thank you.